Everybody, Mike Erie, Tim Stafford, and we're both in bad moods today. We've been trying for an hour to figure out how to record through our normal system software, which is called Riverside. It's not been allowing us. We've tried everything. We've we've reset caches, we've restarted computers, we've downloaded browsers, we've done all the troubleshooting, we've talked to AI bots, and we had to go to Zoom today. So if it sounds different, looks different, that's what's happening.
If you even see it or hear it, because we don't
Yeah,
even
we
know.
don't even know if it will work. So we're hoping this will work. Two big things happened this week. Number one, well, three, probably more. Number one, um, Tim Stafford and his wife Shauna are doing the Lord's work in Auburn, California. Had a big school board meeting last night, and Shauna made a really compelling case. Do you want to just fill us in? Because this is such a great picture of what local advocacy looks like.
And how it fails.
Well, how
Um,
I don't think it fails.
no, I mean it's so everybody will probably remember if they've listened to podcasts for a while that we were in a fight last year. Maybe it was longer than that now. Trying to advocate for the more marginalized communities in this town because the decisions that the board keeps
The
making,
school board.
school board keeps pushing them out. So they can't, like, they closed down the one school that served the lowest socioeconomic kids, and now they have to walk a long way to another school. So we tried to stop that, failed. They want to get rid of the DEI statement because they think it's evil and they think it's racist. So we fought that and we won. But now they have a fully, almost a fully conservative board. One of our best friends is on there. She's the lone wolf fighting. And so last night they brought it back up because now they have a majority, as they do in many places from the top level of our nation down. And they got away, they did away with it. So we tried, but it's gone. And while it's just a statement, the statement is important because it helps those marginalized folks know that there are folks in the community that care about them, that they as human beings matter in this system and that we want them to be a part of this system. And by just taking that away, it's saying we don't care.
Hmm.
So while it's not the biggest thing, it is a big thing because it's part of a larger puzzle
Right.
that we can see coming down the pipeline now.
Yeah.
So defeated, discouraged, but we will lick our wounds and we will figure out what to do next. The problem is that the folks on this thing, they're unwilling to have conversations. That
Yeah.
I can't say
Tell
that for
tell people
everybody.
about the approach you've tried. You've tried to rewrite the statement so that it's agreeable.
So we approached them and said, "Hey, we would be like, if you have problems with how this is worded or whatever, let's all sit down together in a you know, bipartisan, whatever you want to call it, effort to rewrite it so that everybody feels heard and seen, so that issues can be addressed." And they pretty much just said no. They just want it gone.
Hmm.
So there's no, this demographic of folks is unwilling to have conversations. They're unwilling because a lot of these conversations, when you get into it with somebody and you start asking a few questions, it
Hmm.
falls apart quickly. And then you can have a conversation about, well, what's at the root of the reason why you want to do away with this? Because this breaks down so quickly, it's not super deep, you
Yeah.
know? And so it's just driven by, you can call it whatever you want to call it. In my eyes, it's driven by a lot of hate and fear. So we tried the bipartisan route. We tried to rewrite it. We've tried to sit down and listen. We've tried to not dehumanize and play that game that is being played, and try to listen and be curious about what a different faction of people want out of our
Hmm.
community.
Hmm.
They don't want to have that conversation. So I don't know. We were just talking off camera, like, about Gavin Newsom and the way that he's been like trolling Trump, and I don't like it. I don't like. Uh, to me, it feels like a de-evolution, like we're devolving into a 12-year-old system, but
Hmm.
nothing else is working, and this is moving the needle somehow. And as much as I don't like it, I don't know what else. We're in a really weird time period.
I feel like um, our age group experienced the best of American culture in the 80s and 90s and some of the worst. Um, it is weird. And I don't know. I was just proud of you and Shauna for showing up and
Yeah.
being gracious and joyfully, graciously non-compliant.
There wasn't a lot of
And
joy in it last night
well,
or
remember,
this
joy is not a
morning.
feeling, bro.
You're right. You're
It's a
right.
place. It's a
We're
place of
partnering
standing.
in. We're
It's
leaning
a
into it.
Yep. It's a
I was
place
thinking
of
about it. We
standing.
talked with Gombus about powers and principalities a while ago.
A long
I
time ago.
asked
Yeah.
him if it was similar to the way they portrayed the Joker in The Dark Knight, because Michael Caine gives that
Oh
really
yeah.
awesome speech, Alfred, to Bruce about um, some people just want to watch the world burn. Like
Yeah.
you can't
Yep.
crack the code. You can't figure out
Yeah.
what the motive is. They just want to burn it down. And that's kind of how I'm
Yeah.
feeling right now with what I'm seeing is like it's just
Yep.
burn it to the ground. And
Yeah.
that's a really difficult thing to oppose because if there
There's
isn't
no.
a
That's right.
motive, then
We just
you're
all
just
we can do is resist, and our
yeah,
resistance is creative. And again, joyful is not a feeling.
that's right.
Joyful is a place of standing where we realize there are two narratives at work. One that appeals to human history as ultimate, and one that appeals to the reign of God as ultimate.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that doesn't make it easier.
No.
It just means we can stand without resorting to violence. We can stand without resorting to threats or coercion, even when we lose. And
Yeah.
so
And when
I
we're
just
tired.
totally applaud you. Totally. Seth and I and my wife went to Lincoln Park. So we got our resistance on with Lincoln Park last night. And I just wish, Seth Erie, wish you could have seen the face and the jumping and the dancing. Couple of rows, just all of the people in the rows around us were grabbing Seth and jumping up and down with him. It
I
was just
love
one of
that.
this. Yeah, it was just the greatest thing. And um, I brought earplugs. He's like, Daddy, I don't need earplugs. I like loud. And he did. He did much more than mom and dad did. Let me just throw that out there.
That's a little different. It
So
hits a little different when you get older.
So I opened my text messages. There are 50 text messages about the board and about ordaining you. Because, I've thought about wearing a collar too, man. I want a collar. There's something. Um, so that was the second thing that happened. So proud of you and Shauna. And proud of Seth Erie, doggone it. We rocked out. Sometimes, punk rock, even though Linkin Park is not punk rock, but rocking out will help. And Seth got some, and he's home today, just so you know, recovering. And by recovering, I mean he's watching clips on YouTube from the concert last night. The third thing that happened was James Dobson
Oh
passed
yeah.
away. And man, that was I grew up in the midst of that whole thing.
Yep.
I not only grew up as a kid and a teenager, but then as a young married and parent, this was the primary resource sort of available. And Tim, I'm always conflicted because I I recognize that a lot of the views that were expressed as they've borne fruit and turned out years later were false and either potentially harmful or in actuality harmful.
Yeah.
And I also recognize that he's a complex human being, and it's hard to know how to eulogize people who, because I mean I've had people email me rarely, but a couple of times saying, "Man, your teaching on this really harmed me,"
Right.
and it's like, what do you say to that?
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean exactly, exactly. I had no idea, and you know, and so I just it was just an interesting thing that whole institutional age of Campus Crusade, Focus on the Family, the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, Young Life, like that whole institutional mode, not only is dying in a metaphorical, like cultural sense, but now literally.
Yeah.
And the things that are coming in to replace it aren't necessarily better, right? We've got the Doug Wilson thing we referenced earlier, and the Gospel Coalition and other places, and it's just interesting, just interesting. I don't. I just sat in the middle of like John MacArthur. um, dying, James Dobson dying. How do you recognize complex legacies? And is there anything other than a complex legacy at this
There's a
point?
variety of responses right now online,
Yeah, yeah.
from
And
just
what's
absolute anger filled to
yeah,
a little bit more
yeah. Well, I mean,
somewhat loving responses.
yeah, yeah. I just, how do we recognize the complexity of people in the harmfulness and in their intentions to be helpful? And it's just, again, back to your statement, it's a weird time.
It is a
Damn it.
weird time. Yeah, you can
So,
really feel like that there is a shuffling
yeah,
happening. I'm just hoping that it'll land in a healthy place. It's hard not to look at the national movements and think that we are not in, that we might not land well
yeah,
after this. So it's really hard to figure out. And again, I mean, we're watching families get torn apart,
yep,
like
yep.
the, yeah, there was a bunch just yesterday. And
I saw it.
so it's like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I just don't know what posture to hold.
It was
It's really
interesting.
difficult.
I don't know if this is allowed to say. Nah, I probably shouldn't. Um, there are, I'll tell you offline. There
Everybody's going,
are
oh,
there are conversations happening. So when this comes out, we'll be hosting a Nashville conversation,
the
and then
night this comes out. Yeah.
yeah, and then the next Tuesday a Memphis conversation,
Assuming this comes out.
and yeah, and those are interesting. There are interesting things happening around those. I just all I know, Tim, all I know, and we've said it 1,000 freaking times, is I got to take care of what's right beneath my feet. I just can't, I can't go beyond it. It's too much. It's too big. It's too wearying. It's too demoralizing. And the earliest Christians lived in much harder cultural work. And so I'm reading books around the earliest Christians and how they embodied, it wasn't a third way, it was actually called a third humanity,
Hmm.
by some of the Roman critiquers of it, a third humanity, which is fascinating to me.
Hmm.
Because third way feels like, well, you've got you've got a middle road between two extremes. A third humanity is a presentation of a new way of being human, which is what is compelling to both of us.
Yeah, that sounds a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what was it that fueled the early church against, not against even, but like towards the creation of countervailing practices, philosophies, and communities that, that ended up changing the nation. And so I think we're in one of those moments where
Hmm.
we get to make some of the value judgments the early church made. Get away
Hmm.
from empire and into marginalized communities, being good news for the poor, the sharing and redistributing of resources, the proclaiming of the gospel. I mean, we had the best conversation. I referenced it last episode in our church about, is Jesus appealing, and who finds him appealing. And so I did this whole thing on, if you're really happy with the status quo and just want some Jesus sprinkled on it, Jesus isn't good news for you.
Hmm.
Um, if you're really unhappy with the way the world works, then Jesus is great news. And so the fact that we even feel like we have to make Jesus compelling is an indictment, not on
Yes.
Jesus, but on the fact that I'm an upper middle class white person and captured by American definitions of success and significance. And so, well, what problem is Jesus solving for me? I don't need daily bread because I can go get some, or why do I need forgiveness when I can kind of perform my way religiously into
Yeah.
heaven? So
Well,
all
this
that is
morning,
to
real quick
say,
before I know you're pivoting here, but
no, no, no. There's,
um, this morning, after I got the kids out and whatever, I put on some punk and just like locked in and bounced around the house and kind of let some of that emotion out.
yeah,
Uh, I can't remember if it was before or after I listened to that. Somebody sent me, actually, the friend who's on the school board who just, she went to bed feeling sick, woke up feeling sick. Like,
Mhm.
and just kind of lamented this morning. Last night was really hard. This morning was difficult. But then she sent a sermon from the local Episcopal priest here from
Mm,
last Sunday. And
mm.
all their sermons, or whatever I don't know what he calls them, but
Homilies?
homilies are like 10 to 15 minutes long. They're always really short and
Yeah.
punctual, if that, sometimes they're shorter. But this one was on Mary's song and just kind of like what it
Hmm.
represented to. He just kind of unpacked in this really beautiful way and how
I
communal it
love that.
was, and
I
like
love that.
Rome was in full, like the wheels were rolling, like it was this, it was
Yeah.
strong at that point, and the role that Elizabeth played in that, and
Mm,
all
mm,
of this. So it was really, really beautiful and
hmm.
encouraging and very communal. And it really reminded me of the He is Risen stuff because it was kind of leaning into leaning into what it is and reminding each other for the two women in the story, like about just who God is, how God is postured towards us in
Yeah.
the shadow of Rome, in the shadow of all these things that were happening. So it was just really like, I haven't spent
Yeah.
a lot of time with that, and that made me want to kind of
Yeah.
spend some time doing more research on it because it was really encouraging that, as dark and violent as things are, not that they seem, that they are,
Hmm.
there is the joy leaning into that
Yeah.
posture is just, I mean, it's just
Yeah.
healthy. Therapy
Yeah.
this week, she was just like, somebody told you when you were young that you had to be the savior to everybody. So we
Mm,
have to get down and to find that hot coal because I get so spun out. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
so although it's all connected.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. That's right. And interesting, speaking of heaven and connected, the president's mention of wanting to get there
That
was,
was
I
interesting.
thought, yeah.
Some
And
people think I won't get there. I don't know. I'm the leading expert on heaven though, so amongst everything else, no one knows more about heaven than me.
oh boy. Anyway, all right, let's transition because I mean, I've sang the song Although the Ground is Sinking Sand, and I do kind of believe that. And
Oh, and
so,
did you listen to the song? Is it okay to attach it to this?
absolutely.
Just so the people know that it's coming at the end.
Yes.
Because I was
Yes,
going to
yes,
do this
yes.
for the a short version of what we're doing for the Lord's Prayer. Music is helpful for me. Music is helpful
Hmm.
for me to unlock things. Whatever. Like this right way we learn the alphabet in song when we're kids. Like melody has a way of it's something intrinsic to the human spirit.
Roy G. Biv.
So I made a song out of the Lord's Prayer that I was going to do as one of the Wanderer things, but I'm going to attach it to the end of this episode.
Nice.
So it's at the end. You have to go to the
Yes.
end.
Yes. Yeah. And we sang that song last night for Lincoln Park. In the end, it doesn't even matter. So I had to fall to lose it all. Um, let's go to the words of Jesus.
Please.
So we looked at, briefly at the introduction of the Lord's Prayer in Luke, teach us to pray, and we looked at 2 weeks of oh man, this is filled with all sorts of praying. The lead in Matthew is much different, and so again, we're not even touching the prayer yet, but just the context in which it's given, I think, is very instructive.
Oh, then maybe I should wait to put it on the next episode.
But I don't know. We'll see.
Let's
We'll
see.
see. Matthew 6, verse 1. Be careful not to practice your righteousness. Now, practice your righteousness is a phrase used to describe the three most central acts of Jewish piety, according to the Pharisees: prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. If you boil down righteousness, those would be the three central pillars. That's not all it was, but it was like those were the emphases. So be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others in order to be seen by them. We've talked about this when we were in the Sermon on the Mount, right? The issue isn't being caught praying in public or acting righteous in public. The issue is doing it so that you're caught,
Hmm.
so that you're noticed, so that you get approved of. That's why I'm so opposed to filming godly deeds and putting them on social media.
Hmm.
Hey, I'm on this missions trip. Look at this well water we just did. Um, hey, we're at this shelter and look at us. I mean, just all the things, right? All the things that we would know. and suspect. The reason Jesus opposes this, if you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. In other words, whatever rewards you get for being seen by others is the only reward you'll receive. There's nothing else there's nothing else involving the reign of God in that act other than just that it's seen by others. So he gives three examples. So when you give to the needy, or in your giving to the needy, it's assumed, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets. And hypocrite, man, that's such a power word there because that was new. Jesus turned it into pejorative, where it was before, as far as we can tell, a theater term for play acting.
Hmm.
And so don't let the play actors fool you into thinking that you can blow trumpets when you're giving your big gifts in the synagogues and on the streets to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward. Whatever honor they get, that's it. There's no involvement of the reign of God in this. But when you give to the needy, and he uses a little idiom here, but do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, and vice versa, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. I have no idea about the reward, but
Yeah.
you're not doing it for the reward. You're doing it because it's righteousness. But there is a sense that God notices and sees, and I don't know what the reward is. An interesting question for me. So almsgiving is the first practice. He then says, and he does this with fasting. Um, we won't look at that, but it's the same critique. Do not disfigure your faces to let people know that you fast. Come on, guys, just kind of be ordinary. But in the middle, so the first example is almsgiving, the third example is fasting, the second example is prayer, obviously, where we're going to spend some time. And in your praying, do not be like the play actors, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Nothing wrong with praying publicly. And notice when he says standing in the synagogue, so this is probably a reference to the Amidah, the standing prayer, the 18 benediction prayer. That's what that word means. It's standing. It's a prayer that you would do when you were standing. Do not be like the play actors, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. And then he adds, and this is super interesting, then he adds, and don't be like the pagans. Those are people outside the covenant with Israel. This isn't a slanderous term. This is just a way that you would refer to people outside of Israel's covenant. So on the one hand, we have play actors, but on the other hand, we have the Gentiles. Do not be like them. Do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words. Right? So we've got praying in order to be impressive to others, and then praying in order to impress the deities with many words. They think they will be heard because of their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him.
That's the one I'm more guilty of. Never was big on public performance prayer, but trying to find like the right way to say it
Right.
or to repeat it enough times, or
Yes.
if I say
And
it
so
this way or this way, will God hear it better or be more likely to?
that's right. That's right. And so for the hypocrites, so he's got the play actors and then sort of the voodoo, I don't know, formula makers. If there's the right tone of voice or the
Yeah,
right
an
posture or the
incantation.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly right. And so a synagogue was a house of prayer, but when you're praying to be seen by others, you've got your reward. But instead, remove the temptation to play act. And so go to a place where you're not going to pretend and you're praying just for God. Um, and if play acting's your thing, yep, I pray out loud and I'm nervous to pray out loud. And so when I pray out loud, I use weird language or posture or whatever. Go into your room, be quiet, be private, no temptation to play act, and just pray. And he'll give us a prayer to use. When the pagans are referenced, it's from an entirely different, it's still kind of play acting, but
Yeah.
instead of impressing others, it's to impress God. And so um there are loads of references to Gentiles piling up names of gods in a babbling like manner. Now, it's not that there are many words, but the many words are thought to impress the god, or it's the search for formula to get what you want. There's a subtle distinction there. On the one hand, it's God, I'm really, really, really wanting to impress you, and so here are the many names and stacks of titles. But then there's this other sense of I really, really want to impress you so that I get what I want.
Hmm.
It's more of a transactional rather than covenantal sort of view. So I went back and I looked at ancient prayers from the Near East and to just give examples of maybe the kinds of things that Jesus was referencing. Um, so these are annoyingly long, just like the Jewish prayers were, but I think they serve as a pretty good example of what Jesus is like cautioning us against. So this is a penitential prayer to every God. Okay, so this is an ancient prayer, probably dates, probably dates from the mid 7th century BC. And it was, man, sorry, I gotta quit vaping
It's time.
every time. Um, this was in a book on Assyrian Babylonian literature. And so this is a prayer, a penitential prayer to every God.
Oh,
Now, what I want
cover
you
your
to
bases.
notice, what I want you to notice isn't the words, although you'll see how stacked and babbling this gets. But what's the assumption about God that's made that would cultivate or make this kind of prayer attractive? Because what we're talking about is how you pray is one of the clearest determiners of what you think God is like.
Hmm.
And so the Jews had ways of praying that made assumptions about what God is like. That God is creator, that God is the author of every good thing, and we noted some of those. And we're also going to note how Jesus sort of differs from some of those. But on the babbling side, what are the assumptions that cultivate these sorts of prayers about
Yeah.
what gods and goddesses are like? So, this is called a prayer to every god. And this is very long, all right? So, and then we'll do one other one, but you'll get a feel for this. May the wrath of the heart of my God be pacified. May the God who is unknown to me be pacified. May the goddess who is unknown to me be pacified. May the known and unknown God be pacified. May the known and unknown goddess be pacified. The sin which I have committed, I know not. The misdeed which I have committed, I know not. A gracious name may my God announce. A gracious name may my goddess announce. A gracious name may my known and unknown God announce. A gracious name may my known and unknown goddess announce. Pure food I have not eaten. So this is a penitent prayer to every God. Clean water I have not drunk. An offense against my God I have unwittingly committed. A transgression against my goddess I have unwittingly done. O Lord, my sins are many, great are my iniquities. My God, my sins are many, great are my iniquities. The sin which I have committed, I know not. The iniquity which I have done, I know not. The offense which I have committed, I know not. The transgression I have done, I know not. The Lord, in the anger of his heart, hath looked upon me. The God, in the wrath of his heart, hath visited me. The goddess hath become angry with me, and hath grievously stricken me. The known or unknown God hath straitened me. The known or unknown goddess hath brought affliction on me. I sought for help, but no one taketh my hand. I wept, but no one came to my side. I lamented, but no one hearkens to me. I am afflicted. I am overcome. I cannot look up until my merciful unto my merciful God I turn. I make supplication. I kiss the feet of my goddess and crawl before her. How long, my God? How long? I'm almost done. How long, my goddess, until thy face be turned toward me? How long, known or unknown God, until the anger of thy heart be pacified? How long, known or unknown goddess, until thy unfriendly heart be pacified? Mankind is perverted and has no judgment. Of all men who are alive, who knows anything? They do not know whether they do good or evil. O Lord, do not cast aside thy servant. He is cast into the mire. Take his hand. The sin which I have sinned, turn to mercy. The iniquity which I have committed, let the wind carry away. My many transgressions tear off like a garment. My God, my sins are 7 times 7, forgive my sins. My goddess, my sins are 7 times 7, forgive my sins. Known and unknown God, my sins are 7 times 7, forgive my sins. I mean, that covers a lot of bases.
It's a full insurance plan.
Exactly. But what drives it? What sits underneath it? Right? What assumptions are being made about the gods and the goddesses in this?
They're out to get you.
They are out to get you. They need to be pacified. There are
Yeah.
some that we don't know, but we better freaking include unless they get offended. These gods are offended, right? I mean, it's a whole worldview that's much different than the Jewish worldview that's being assumed in the prayer sermon. What I'm trying to contrast is the Jewish worldview assumed behind Jewish prayer with the Gentile worldview that sits behind Gentile prayer. All right, so here's another one, shorter this time. This is a prayer to Amun Ra. Notice the stacking and so you can see the babbling here, right? It's not just
Hmm.
that it's many words, but it's formulaic and
Hmm.
it's trusting in the fact that I'm saying, okay, so my God, my goddess, my unknown God, my own unknown goddess, like, and then it just stacks over and over and over. So this is a stacking one too. Hail to thee, Amun Ra, Lord of the thrones of the earth, the oldest existence, ancient of heaven, support of all things, chief of the God, Lord of truth, father of the gods, maker of men and beasts and herbs, maker of all things above and below, deliverer of the sufferer and oppressed, judging the poor, Lord of wisdom, Lord of mercy, most loving, opener of every eye, source of joy, in whose goodness the gods rejoice, thou whose name is hidden. That's stacking, that's stacking a lot of titles right there, right? Thou art the one, maker of all that is, the one, the only one, maker of gods and men, giving food to all. Hail to thee, thou one with many heads, sleepless when all others sleep. Adoration to thee. Hail to thee from all creatures from every land, the height of heaven, the depth of the sea. The spirits thou cast made, no, the spirits thou hast made extol thee, saying, Welcome to thee, Father of the Father of gods. We worship thy spirit, which is in us. So that's just a long name of titles.
Hmm.
And certainly the Bible does some of this. Absolutely. You see this in some of the Psalms. In fact, there's psalm language, at least that resonates in English. And so sitting behind a lot of this ancient Near Eastern prayer is the offendability and capriciousness of the gods and the anxiety of people who live in a world that can be subject to that sort of arbitrary malice from deities. And so it's interesting because Jesus, in contrast, um, well, before we get to that, what Jesus does is he says, okay, don't be like the play actors, go into your closet. Don't be like the pagans, because your father knows what you need. So, father, this idea of father is like that's the hinge from which he gives the prayer. So the pagans assume that God is arbitrary, capricious, and unwilling. Jesus presents in turn, don't be like the pagans, but the Father knows. So let's explore the metaphor without nuance, right? Because um saying the Father knows doesn't mean the Father's going, it just is already going to do what the Father's going to do, and you just have to ask. He makes you go through the charade of that. But his presentation of God as Father is meant to encourage petitioning rather than suffocate it, right? Rather than presenting God as arbitrary, capricious, offendable, Jesus talks about God as Father to his disciples, right? So Father, which is super interesting. And it's he's not saying that a long prayer is bad and a short prayer is good. The babbling consists of A, searching for the formula that somehow will get God to do what you want, and then B, praying phrases repetitively and formulaically that you don't actually mean with your heart. So that's the babbling. Mr. Stafford, the only hand in the room is up.
Um, it's hard not to see how people speak to the current president in trying to appeal to his ego to get what they want. And so does that make sense? I'm wondering
Oh,
how much of this is built like that for rulers that were so gaudy or whatever that they knew that the only way to speak to get what they wanted or to live in fear of was to try to manipulate or to say the words how you thought that
yeah.
king.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Like how much
Oh,
kind of
bro.
popular life informed the way that they approached
Yeah.
the
Can you
unseen?
imagine a previous president sitting there and demanding public, virtue signaling about you're the most consequential person that's ever sat in this office? And this is, I mean, yeah, it's just that's exactly right. And which is a very interesting sort of parallel to father because in Judaism, father isn't totally informal. I know we got that comment on our Facebook page. Um, there is a bit of Abba to
Hmm.
that, but there's also a whole backload of respect and distance that is companionable and intimate, but it's still distance. And so it's just an interesting, like when we get in a couple of weeks into Father, um, all for now I want to do is just juxtapose
Yeah.
the worldview of the Gentile world with what the gods were like to how Jesus names God has as Father. How ponderous it must have been to try to include the name of every god or to try to cultivate. Like I have an example from um, somebody trying to get Caesar to do something. The Emperor Caesar,
There you go.
Galerius, Valerius, Maximanius, Invictus, Augustus, Pontifex Maximus, Germanicus Maximus, Egypticus Maximus. These are all regions. Phoebicus Maximus, Sarmenticus Maximus five times, Persicus Maximus twice. I mean, blah blah
Humans are
blah blah
so
blah.
weird.
Like, like just stacked upon stacked upon stacked. And we even see this in some of the ways like the gods were worshipped in the Old Testament, right? The classic example is the prophets of Baal.
Hmm.
This came to mind when I was reading these other prayers. Um, where Elijah said to them, um, I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get two bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves. Let us cut them into pieces, put it on wood, but not set fire to it. I'll prepare the other one and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God. I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God. They agree. Elijah said, choose one of the bulls, prepare it, since there are so many of you, call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. So they took the bull given to them and prepared it. They called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. Baal, answer us, they shouted, but there was no response. No one answered, and they danced around the altar they had made. It's at noon, Elijah began to taunt them, shout louder. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. So they shouted louder, and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until the time for evening sacrifice. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Or even in Acts, like Paul encounters Athens this way. An ancient historian said that there were more statues to gods and goddesses in Athens than people. And so some estimate it was 10,000. I don't know if that's true.
Wow.
But I mean, remember how Paul begins that speech in Acts 17. People of Athens, I see you were, in every way, you are very religious. For I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship. I even found an altar with this inscription: to an unknown God. So even there, you see the same, like, it reminds me of that first prayer to the known and unknown God.
Hmm.
So they were so religious, they wanted to make sure they hadn't left anybody out.
Yeah.
And of course, Paul jumps in
Better safe than
on,
sorry.
yeah, on that. Now, so it's just interesting. Before we even get to the prayer, what Jesus has done here. So he's taken Jewish prayer life and the worldview behind it. And he said, some of you use this to play act and to pretend. And so, for all your standing in the assemblies or disfiguring your faces when you're fasting or blowing of trumpets when you're giving to the poor, there's no reign of heaven involved in any of those actions. Instead, do what you do in secret. That's where you do your acts of righteousness. And when you pray, pretenders, go into a place of privacy so you won't be tempted to play act. Great. But when you're and don't be like the Gentiles who stack titles and names upon titles and names, who seek a way to manipulate God by using the correct formula, the voodoo crowd. Instead, relate to God as Father. Now remember, he's talking to his disciples. He's not talking to Pharisees here, and he's not talking to the voodoo crowd here. He's talking to his disciples. And so he's giving them because you could stack Jewish prayers this way too,
Totally.
right? You could use the Lord's Prayer, and many do, as just another example of empty babbling.
He told us to do it this way. So I'm
Right.
just going to do it. Yeah.
Yep. So I just repeat the words, which is why it's such a big deal that Jesus gives us two versions of it, one in Luke and one in Matthew. One's abbreviated from the other, which makes us think this is an abbreviation of the Amidah. And so when we do have examples of long formal prayers in Judaism, like Solomon's prayer about the temple and some of the Psalms, absolutely. But we also have really short prayers. Lord Jesus, have mercy on me, a sinner. So the length of the prayer isn't it doesn't make it babbling or not, because you can turn the shortest prayers into babbles, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So that's not the point. The thing he's going to give is he's going to modify, I think, the 18 benedictions in a way that captures the new covenant that has come and is coming, and the emphases around that covenant. But the thing I just want to sit on is that I know Father has all sorts of toxic images
Hmm.
and masculine images, but just take those, we'll get to those. But I just want us to be hit in the face with Father. Of all the ways to relate to God, he uses the metaphor of parent and child. And so we need to repent of our play acting. And I do this when I preach, or worship leaders do this when they get into worship voice, or all the things, right? We're on stages and we're just tempted to play act. I totally get that. But then there's the voodoo hearts among us where we just think we can get if we can somehow figure out the formula. And this is what drives me to things like, hey, I prayed for my kids, so why aren't my kids okay? And
Hmm.
I was pure before marriage, so where's all the prosperity, purity gospel that I was promised?
It exposes all the transactional ideologies that you hold on to.
Totally, totally. Father is a covenant word, particularly in the new covenant. Now, the Adam was God's son. Israel was God's son. Jesus is God's son. And then we cry Abba Father as God's children throughout the rest of the New Testament. So this move to call God Father is what the new covenant is about.
Hmm.
And so we are invited into sonship and daughtership through this. So man, but there are restrictions to it. In other words, we don't get to call the shots. We're in submission to a greater authority, and we're to serve the greater authority. And we'll get to all the nuances of this, but I'm just saying in
Yeah.
general,
So a bunch of questions
Father,
on that one.
Father is a covenant word.
Yeah.
So in as a covenant word, as a new covenant word in particular, we're going to tease out what does that mean and what does that look like. But for now, I just want our brains to be re-scrambled around the idea of how should we relate to God as followers of Christ. And the idea is because Christ was God's son, we are now sons and daughters. And the picture of children, we want to just sort of remove a little bit. We don't have to pray with anxiety or trying to curry his favor or stack titles or be impressive or memorize prayers. The picture that Jesus gives is um it's a combination of formality and informality, right? Because it's the Father in the heavens, just to be very clear about who it is we're addressing, but it's also the Father. And so there's this weird, and I think it's the intimacy with which Jesus prayed that separates the Amidah and the Jewish prayer from what the disciples were asking for.
Yeah.
It's the intimacy, it's the Abba Father sort of intimacy, because God was called Father other places, but Jesus seemed there was a different vibe in the ministry of Jesus
Well,
about the
yeah,
fatherhood
let's
of
say
God.
Jesus had such a different vibe. Like Jesus was the physical manifestation of that intimacy. The way that he
Exactly.
spoke to and the way that he interacted and the way he listened.
Yes.
So,
I only do what the Father says. The
yeah, so
Father's
that
always at work, so
spins
I'm
it a
always at
little bit
work.
different than kind of
It
where you
does.
may have landed or where at least where you're starting from.
Yes.
He's already
Yes.
got it all spun out. So it's that makes it like a little bit more three-dimensional with,
Very much so. So to imitate Jesus's prayer life is to see God as Father, and to see God as Father is to see permission, freedom, not being afraid, not having to stack, being
yeah.
honest, like all those things. But how do we pray then? Well, that's when he gives us the covenant prayer, right? The
Yeah.
new covenant prayer.
It's so hard. You need almost like, and I'm speaking this for myself first and foremost, how to like delete the files that are in my head for what prayer is and how to pray.
Yeah,
Because it's even as you're picking it apart, my brain wants to go straight into the models that it's understood,
yeah,
and then it instantly becomes fantastical and transactional in that way again. Like
yeah,
even in trying to reapproach it, it's just like I only know it one way.
totally.
And I get that that's kind of where they were coming from too, to a certain extent. Like you've got Jesus in your presence, and you're like, hey, why
Yeah,
we got you here?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Could you answer X, Y, and Z? I get it. I love that so much,
yeah.
but it's so hard to take that piece out and
Mm-hmm,
say, okay, let me unbiasedly, with no filters and no pre
mm-hmm,
whatever,
mm-hmm.
rebuild this thing to be what it's meant to be.
Yeah, yep.
Because it's so hard. Like when you were just talking, like I was thinking about like the idea of Moses changing the mind of God or whatever. Like I know that
Mm-hmm.
that's packed, but the way that in a two-dimensional view of how we see that, of course I'm going to pray a certain way to try to
Yeah,
bend God's will to mine
yeah.
for whether it's even something super noble like healing
Yeah.
or
But see,
whatever.
you can do that in a consumeristic way or you can do that in a covenantal way. And that's the distinction we want
That's
to
the
try to
distinction.
explore more.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Because Abraham negotiated with God.
Yeah, that's so
Jesus tells
fascinating.
parables about great chutzpah, right? We're going to revisit. That was one of your favorite sermons that we did
Chutzpah.
back in the day. Yeah, it was praying with boldness.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. So, but again, all of that can be performative
Hmm.
and babbling. And so just because it's Christian language doesn't mean it's not babbling or not performative, right?
Right. Totally.
So there's a worldview that Jesus is dismantling that both the play actors and the babblers share. And he's trying to replace that with the covenantal understanding of God as Father, which not only is covenantal, but it's intimate. And so Paul is going to riff, I mean, in Galatians and in Romans, right? The Spirit testifies to our spirit that we are indeed children of God and can call God Abba Father, and there is no fear. And so rather than praying because of trying to avoid bad things, I sit in a fallen world and know that bad things happen. The covenant assumes the continuation of evil and suffering, even among God's people, right? And so what I'm praying into is I'm asking the Father to do things. But I can either do that transactionally or I can do that covenantally. So I'm either doing it as a participant in the reign of God, or I'm doing it as somebody who's trying to bend the reign of God,
To
to
mine.
my
Yeah.
will and for my purpose. And there's a fine line there because sometimes I think I'm doing it for one reason, but as it turns out, no. So I've prayed for houses, I've prayed for money, I've prayed for cars that work.
Oh,
I've
can you pray
prayed
those
for,
for me?
yes, dude. Oh my Lord. Jesus, give Tim. He went in for an oil change and came out much poorer than he went in. Uh, we've all lived that.
Hey,
So
yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
yeah, so all that is to say, and we also have to get rid of the idea of what children were in the ancient world. Like to like there's one very instructive passage where the children are being a nuisance to the disciples and Jesus.
Hmm.
And we think, oh, these are precious moments, kind of figurine children. They're very clean and white and they're very polite. And oh my goodness, why would the disciples ever shoo away these nice, sweet children? Well, odds are they were beggars and they were noisy and they were bothersome and they were boisterous and they kept trying to interrupt and get attention and right? And so the disciples are indignant. They're getting in the way of Jesus's work. And so Jesus gets indignant in return at them because the kingdom belongs to the noisy and the boisterous and the messy and the unpolished. And so to relate to God as Father doesn't mean nice, polite, quiet. To be a child then wasn't thought to be of any spiritual value whatsoever. You know, it wasn't like you were some model of innocence. You were just half of you didn't make it to adulthood. You were drained on family resources until you were old enough to work. And of course you were loved, but I mean, there was no helicopter parenting back in the first century, right? Joseph and Mary lost Jesus for 3 days and no one like batted an eye. So what we're gonna do,
Didn't we have a kid?
yeah, I thought he was with you.
Did we lose the Messiah?
Oh, one of the greatest lines in the history of the world. And imagine Mary reading Luke's account, going, "Yeah, we lost him."
Yeah.
Because where else did Luke get that information? You know?
Imagine them reading and then looking over at her, and she's just kind of like, eh?
Well, I think she's the one that told him. Richard Bauckham does this really interesting study where all the people that are named in Luke's gospel are the people he got the stories from.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting. So it's like, yeah, there were two dudes to Emmaus, and one guy's name is that. Well, Bauckham says, well, that's the guy he was talking to. So,
Hmm.
like, how do we know Mary's song? How do we know Mary stored those things up in her heart? Well, he was talking to Mary about
Yeah.
this. So that's just an interesting, like, little sidebar. But all that is to say, I just want to slap us in the face the way Jesus did about, okay, what does it mean to pray to God as Father? And you're right, we have to delete the files. We have to
Yeah.
reload a whole new operating
I don't know
system.
how to do that. I always think of the Matrix, like, I know Kung Fu.
Yes, yes. So,
Up,
well, that's what the Lord prayer does. The Lord's prayer reprograms us away from the play acting and away from the voodoo into a shared intimacy with Jesus. And it's the intimacy part I'm not great at. I'm great at talking. I'm great sometimes at sitting in quiet, but intimacy, man, that's a whole different thing. Like his spirit testifies with my spirit. I don't even know what that means exactly, except, I should feel better than I do or something. I don't know. So in your phrase, we're going to tease this out. We're going to follow the rabbit holes. But next week, what we're going to do is Jesus in Matthew has this teaching right after this where he talks about asking and seeking and knocking, and a good
hmm
father doesn't give bad gifts. So let's deal with that too. Let's just at least talk about that. Um, because among the people we are and are friends with, no one's sitting around going, "Man, God gives so many good gifts."
Right.
It's all the focus on all the things God isn't doing, and I wonder if like we're deeply missing something.
Oh, for sure. That and also the way that that verse was interpreted was
Mm-hmm.
all about just like, well, I'm not asking correctly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeking
Yes.
correctly. Like I'm missing something
Yes.
because I'm doing those three things.
Which means you've just turned it into voodoo.
Right.
So ask, seek, knock can just be another voodoo
Yeah.
approach, right? I just have to ask rightly, knock enough, be
Yep.
persistent, pray with
Yep.
chutzpah, as
That's mine.
opposed to
That's mine.
Father, which is trust. Like, oh, there's this beautiful psalm, like a weaned child is my, oh, what is it? Is my soul before me. Like it's the idea of somebody who's just been weaned, but they retain that intimacy with their mother. Um, I don't know if I'm saying it right or not, but the point is like the image here of father is one of trust,
Hmm.
that the father knows good gifts. But
Which
yeah,
is
but what
hard too.
about,
Like even when we started the Genesis series, and I asked you like, and you did it in there, like our understanding of rain, like a king's reign, not
mm-hmm,
as
mm-hmm,
weather,
mm-hmm,
is so polluted by our understanding of leadership and whatever. So rain is not a positive
right,
term for
right,
us in our lexicon. And
right,
so obviously then we take that when we read it and we plug that in there,
yeah,
our understanding of what that word means, and then we attribute that to God.
right,
It's the same thing with this kind of stuff. Like we have under like trust. What does it mean to
mm-hmm,
trust God? Well, trust
mm-hmm,
is very transactional. You earn trust and you
mm-hmm,
betray trust and you lose trust. And
mm-hmm,
so when you say just prayer is trust in this thing, my immediate response is to drum up all the understanding of that I have of trust,
yeah,
everyone who's broken my
yeah,
trust.
yeah,
And then I approach that differently. I
mm-hmm,
approach that guarded. I approach that
mm-hmm,
with,
mm-hmm,
different limitations on how far I'm willing to go with that with you.
yeah,
So it's so difficult. I'm so programmed that I can't see around even definitions to land in the place that he's trying to take us in this. So it's
yep.
just
And
interesting. It's a
that's
really
why we
hard
love you, dude.
task.
Yeah. All right. Well, my friend, that leaves loads more to discuss. So we're hoping this records. We love you all.
Maybe.
Thank you for supporting us. There's
If
a lot
not, it
of
was a
great
nice
things
chat,
happening.
Mike.
I know, right? All right, buddy. I love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for listening to this conversation. The Voxology Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is made possible by listeners just like you. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Voxology Podcast or on Tithely, tithe.ly, and just search Voxology Podcast. Links for both are in the show notes and on our website. You can interact with the hosts on Facebook /Voxology Podcast or on Instagram at Voxology Podcast and on Twitter or X, whatever it is, at Mike Erie. Thank you, thank you, thank you for walking this long road with us.